Hi everyone, welcome to the first showcase of the day. My name is Liya, I'm from Reinventure Group, and today we're joined by Jack Deeb, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Mycelium, and that really doesn't do him any justice because he's so much more than that. If you've been around this week, if you have watched some of the sessions, you would have seen Jack speaking at a number of panels. I think he brings a wealth of knowledge around DAOs. If you didn't watch the session yesterday that he had with Aaron Wright, do it. It was amazing. He's doing so much education in the space and, investing time for us all to learn about DAOs and how that structure works. And I believe it was Joni yesterday on Twitter Spaces who referred to Jack as the gigabrain in the DAO space. I mean, coming from Joni, that is a huge compliment. So that should give you an idea of what we're dealing with here. But today we are here to talk about Mycelium and learn more about the business. And there's been a lot of conversations about DAOs and the evolution of DAOs and kind of looking forward. But Jack, really keen to find out about Mycelium. It's a very interesting structure. There's sort of lots of projects and that fall under that umbrella. So yeah, could you kick us off by telling us what Mycelium is and a little bit about how it came about?
Yeah, for sure. Can you guys hear me all right? Is that better? Very good. Firstly, Liya, thank you for the very kind introduction, possibly too kind. And before I answer the question of what is Mycelium, I just have to call out how happy I am to see so many of our southern friends up in Brisbane, in Queensland. I think I've been pulling on Steve's jacket for a while, trying to get more attention for Blockchain Australia in Queensland, but it's really, really great to see so many of you here. I hope to get to meet you throughout the day and hopefully you can meet a few other members of the Mycelium team. One other thing I heard this morning from Liya actually was that there was a conversation on Twitter Spaces this morning trying to speculate as to what Mycelium is. So hopefully I can give a relatively clear answer here. We think of Mycelium as a technology company that's building transaction infrastructure for public blockchains. And that sounds quite abstract. The reason it sounds abstract is because we're working on 4 separate things. The first thing that we're working on is data. So we're one of the Chainlink node operators within the Chainlink ecosystem, and we provide data about 720 different price feeds to a lot of the applications that are using blockchain technology at their core. As part of that business, we also provide validator services for blockchains and protocols, and then we're also working on an ETH Lite client as well, which we're really excited to share more with you all in the weeks ahead. The second thing we do is data analytics. So one thing that Chainlink supported us on from quite an early stage was building a data pipeline, which can be used to try to interpret this pool of data that we're seeing emerge on public blockchains as to what are users doing, what are data providers doing, what are DAOs doing, and what are protocols doing. We started off that business looking at data providers and the reputation of data providers, and we're looking forward in the coming months to sharing more with you about what we're doing in the protocol space and the user protocol space around identity and reputation and discriminating between this global base of what is now DeFi users. The third thing we're doing is building smart contracts. So we've got I always talk very highly about our smart contract development team. We've been working on the Tracer project for some months now, where we've been writing derivative smart contracts for the Tracer project, and that's a whole conversation in itself. But I think fundamentally at Mycelium, we believe that more transactions will occur on public blockchains moving forward, and we think it's going to be really interesting to see how some of these early protocols start to be used for this distribution of public blockchain transactions or DeFi. And then the last thing that we do, which is quite separate, is Koji. So Koji has emerged as our investment arm, and I guess getting back to the core of why it's so complicated to explain Mycelium is because we've been around for a while and seen so many good opportunities, and we did have the realization at some point that we couldn't build everything ourselves. So we've got a team within Koji who's constantly looking at the space, working with young teams, and looking for opportunities to invest in businesses that are aligned with ours and building cool stuff. So yeah, that's Mycelium. We're a team of around 90 people now. split within each of those separate projects, and looking to grow in Australia and overseas as well as we can.
Wow, that was a lot. So Mycelium umbrella, Mycelium node, 2 DAOs, and a VC fund. We will talk a little bit more about how that came about in that structure, but if you take us back, could you just briefly talk to us about when you guys started it, how it evolved and sort of what was the beginning? Because I think you've been around for a few years. So yeah, we'd be keen to find out about that.
Yeah, a lot of the early Mycelium team went to university together, actually, here in Queensland, and it was 2 of our co-founders, Pat Nash, who made the decision to drop out of their economics degree and start researching oracles and what sort of Chainlink was talking about toward 2017, 2018. And Pat Nash did some insane work in terms of understanding that space, which a lot of people still don't understand. Started working with the Chainlink team more closely since the business was formally established in 2018. And then by 2019, a few others of us started to finish our university degrees, and Chainlink gave us the opportunity to become one of the first node operators within the Chainlink ecosystem. Mycelium, as sort of what we know it as today, emerged through sort of late 2019, early 2020, as we started to build out these services, which we believe are going to be complementary to the data markets that we see emerge out of Chainlink and similar businesses in the years to come. So yeah, that's where we came from. I think, again, importantly, data plays such an important role in traditional finance, but we believe that the role that data will play in the next wave to come is going to be so much bigger and so much more mind-bending. And I think for us, with what we're building, coming from the Oracle perspective of, well, what will happen if we have more personal data, more business data, more asset data on chain, and what will that allow in terms of transactions? We bring that mentality to everything that we do, and that's how we'll proceed.
Great. I think you guys described it at the session with Aaron Wright yesterday quite well, where that made a lot of sense to me, where you sort of mentioned that there's the DeFi, which is a system, and then you have the DAOs, that is a more efficient way of running and managing the DeFi system. So I think for me that was actually really useful. So going on from that, we talked about all the different projects that are running under Mycelium. Was that by design, or was it sort of organic? Obviously, there's an ecosystem that sort of is quite circular, and it makes sense now, but when it was all kind of coming together, did you design it that way, or did it just fall into place?
Yeah, it was quite an organic growth, which is a bit of a, I guess, Mycelium, right? But by organic growth, I mean we're an Oracle provider, right? We're a node operator, so we were sourcing data and providing it to some of the earliest DeFi protocols that we now know and love, such as Synthetics in the derivative space, Ampliforth in the US dollar stablecoin space, Nexus Mutual in the insurance space, so on and so forth. And what that allowed us to do was get a greater understanding of protocols, but also thinking about this. We started to realize that as more institutions would seek to use this technology for their transactions, and particularly institutions, they would come in here and see that originally Chainlink was about 5 node operators. It's now, I believe, around 200 data providers within the ecosystem. And so there was always going to be points at which the people seeking to use this technology would want to know, well, who's going to be providing my data and how have they performed in providing that data historically, which of course, all of that information is out there in the open. And so hopefully, as I'm sort of rambling, you can see us sort of start to piece together, well, we're going to provide data, we're going to build smart contracts, and then we're going to look at the relationship between the two and start to do some data analytics work. So it sounds like we're doing a number of things, but it's actually sort of within the same supply chain that we like to focus on.
And I think it's really interesting. For me, reputation DAO is a really interesting concept, because I think in a decentralized world, reputation will mean a lot. So, and presumably that can be then translated from Chainlink onto any other system, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think ratings is a big problem, or just big opportunity, I guess, not problem, in terms of wanting to understand how performant certain agents are within their roles within any ecosystem. And I think with what we've seen with public blockchains allowing transactions, it's just meant that these reputation metrics are usually attached to people that are involved in transactions, which often before you hand over your money or your assets, you want to know whether the system is reliable or not. And because of how open these systems are, we believe that these reputation and identity protocols will become increasingly important as there is discrimination on the user side for, well, I do want to use X protocol, but I don't want to use Y protocol, even though from here in Brisbane, Australia, I have the access to use probably 1,000 different protocols. So.
Great. If we now shift gears a little bit and talk about the Australian ecosystem, obviously through Koji Capital, through the venture capital arm, you probably get to see a lot of really interesting projects. So could you talk a little bit about what's happening in the Australian ecosystem, what you're seeing, what's exciting, and then we'll move into the global picture after.
Yeah, I mean, Australia has a really, really exciting ecosystem of young teams building innovative, cool projects. It's something that we're certainly proud of at Mycelium, but proud of in the broader context as well. A lot of the people that I speak to who are part of Blockchain Australia or others are really competing against US and UK and Europe, which is really cool. I think as far as trends that we're seeing on the Koji front, I think there's probably two trends that are really emerging this year. The first is a lot of projects seeking to bridge or bring traditional assets into this DeFi ecosystem. So natural resources has been a huge topic of discussion this week, but I feel like I've spoken to 5 projects this week who are looking at carbon, who are looking at gold, who are looking at even real estate and starting to work out, well, this financial infrastructure seems really cool and I want to work with it. So how can I work with it using these assets which aren't currently touching this infrastructure? There are some issues to solve there around KYC and scalability. But I think once we start to solve some of those problems, we're going to see a real proliferation of those kinds of projects in the space. The second trend that I find interesting, because we've been watching it for probably, the last couple of years unfold, is the types of institutions that are getting involved. We saw proprietary trading firms move in really quickly. We saw hedge funds now start to move in. We've seen asset managers now really, I think, heard of a couple of projects in the last couple of months where traditional asset managers are now moving into the space, and also banks. Like ANZ's announcement this week was quite incredible, but there's similar announcements that have been made and will be made for similar banks in other jurisdictions. And I think without thinking about that too much, that's really significant. I was having a conversation with a long-time hedge fund manager last night, and he sort of said to me, all my smart friends are now working in crypto. And it's sort of just interesting to see that movement of talent from traditional type financial entities into this DeFi space.
We're running out of time. I see Steve over there. So I'm going to skip the global ecosystem question and ask you, what is next for Mycelium? Where do you see the project going? Talk us through the next couple of years.
Yeah, so we're going to focus on what we've got, of course. We've got a really clear remit, as hopefully you now understand, for what we're trying to achieve at the moment. I think, as I said a bit earlier, we can't build everything ourselves, so we'll look to continue to be a healthy ecosystem participant and support teams with good ideas who are looking to build in the space. And hopefully we have a couple of good ideas along the way ourselves too, and start to bring some new projects to the market, which we look forward to sharing with all of you when that happens.
Awesome, thank you so much. If you guys get a chance to talk to Jack throughout today, then definitely do. He's got plenty more to share. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Liya. Thanks.